Hello and welcome to the Creators Guild podcast. I am Chris Howell and with me is
Jared Lovelady.
And we are here to talk about all things creative. So last time we talked a little bit about riffing and we shared a story with you. It's kind of a fun experience. It's a little bit of a challenge. We were talking about a little bit today, a little bit of a challenge with our podcast. We really want to spend time talking more in depth about the book and the story that we're creating and the world we're creating. But it's really hard to do that without spoilers. So, we'll keep exploring some different topics, going down some different roads. If there are some things you'd like to hear from us, let us know, and we'll explore some of those topics. You can send us an email or comment on one of our posts or one of our podcast episodes, and we will take a dive into some things you might be interested in. In the meantime, as always, we're going to start with reading another chapter from A Flight from Shadows. And last time we read chapter 11 with Tuara coming home and receiving a nice warm welcome from Corvin. So, without further ado, Flight from Shadows, chapter 12, Puzzles to Solve. Cycle of Aerolith, year 12182. Our oaths bind us and keep our sacred knowledge secure. The world shall not know what we know until we have regained what once was and should be ours. Until then, we shall protect what knowledge we have from all others, and we alone shall know the blessings of the earth, from which all life springs. Saparan Book of Dedication, chapter 32, verse 19. The tapping chorus at the window rose to a crescendo as a gust of wind seized the falling raindrops and furiously hurled them at the glass. Not to be outdone, a rumble of thunder shook the pane. It was mid-morning, and Tuara had been sitting alone in the back corner of the house library for nearly 3 hours. She was poring over her mother's second journal, the one she kept secret, keeping the darkness at bay with a single brass oil lamp. She felt a small pang of guilt for not sharing her mother's words with her father as she read a passage in which her mother mentioned how she hated keeping anything from him. But the contents of the journal were too dear and too dangerous for them to be revealed to anyone else. The feeling quickly subsided, replaced with frustration. Thus far in her reading of the journal, she had found only cryptic hints, half-thoughts and references to other books, all of it mixed in with what one would expect to find in a daily journal. Her mother wrote of her mundane routines, outings she had gone on, and the gripes and annoyances of running a baron's household far more than any of the clues found scattered amongst the pages. Tuara loved reading the journal, even if it caused frustration now and then. Her mother had a way of telling even the most droll events in a story that Tuara could immerse herself in. It also made her feel closer to her mother that had been taken from her at such an unfair time in life. She twirled the small stone that hung from her right earlobe between her fingers, as she often did when in thought. It was an unconscious fidget, for the most part, but this time it got her thinking. She had never removed the pale blue stone with its accompanying delicate silver chain that ran from her earlobe to near the tip of her pointed ear. It had been a gift from her mother, from a time before her memory. A smile crossed her lip as she recalled that her mother had also fidgeted with the stone as she held Tuara of an evening and sang to her before bed. The thought nearly brought a tear to her eye. It had been so many years since her mother's fatal accident, over a century, yet at moments like this, the wound still felt very fresh. Fortunately, it never lasted more than a fading moment or two. Her mind shifted from the stone to her mother's melodic voice in song, to the window as the wind once again picked up, whipping rain in sheets against the glass. A flash from the storm caught her off guard, temporarily blinding her. Before she had a chance to react, a clap of thunder shook her to the bone. She rubbed her eyes, coaxing vision back to them. Once she could see clearly, she stood and made her way to the large bay window overlooking the stroll garden. She scanned the area and was surprised to see the grand willow tree that stood not more than 10 paces from the house, split down the middle, half of it down on the lawn. As she studied it, another far less intense flash of lightning cast the library in light and shadow. From her position near the window, she saw something. No, someone in the far corner of the room. Her hand immediately went to her belt knife. She had it drawn and held it at the ready, quicker than thought. She rolled the knife in her fingers, attempting to find a confident grip on its mother of pearl handle. It was a larger knife than she was accustomed to, with a full foot of steel for a blade and a counterweight skull-cracker pommel of solid brass. She had obtained it from Master Duchesne a few days prior, after one of her practice sessions. "Stay back," she commanded to the now dark corner of the room. Slowly she moved to the writing table, where she had been reading. With her knife raised in an unsteady hand, she reached for the heavy brass oil lamp. She held it up high, doing her best to illuminate the darkness. Lightning flashed again, bathing the room for a moment in a bright white light. She sighed and lowered her knife. Silly girl, jumping at shadows. The room was empty, save for herself. Relief slowly worked its way through her. Her mind stopped racing, her muscles loosened from their tense state, and she eased off her death grip on the lamp. She was growing tired of all this fear business. Since she and the Trekkin youths had returned to Tradoc from their little adventure in the valley, it seemed someone was lurking around every dark corner. It irked her to no end that the fear had such a hold on her, and she was determined to master it and overcome the feelings of foreboding she was wrestling with. Her sessions with Master Duchesne were helping, and she had redoubled her efforts in the practice ring. She had also requested that he give her a deeper instruction in the area of unarmed self-defense, pressing him to teach her more constantly. Thankfully, he had conceded, and she now practiced him 3 times out of the week. This was a considerable increase over their original once-a-week regimen. She had also convinced him to stretch their lessons far from an hour to 2 hours in length. The new knife, when given to her, had done little to calm her trepidation about future attacks. Learning to use it properly in their now expanded training sessions, however, was helping to make headway in that area. Even with the confidence she was building, she still found the need to force calm upon herself at moments like these. She slid her knife back into its tooled white leather sheath, giving it a pat for good measure, and taking a calming breath, she sat in the tall, straight-back chair and slumped over the journal, flipping pages idly. There had to be more there than just the words on the page. She knew there was. There were passages referring to other books, but the books themselves were not named. She had begun reading some of the volumes that she had found, along with the secret journal, but so far she had made no connections. Perhaps with more time and study, she would be able to piece something together. "I wonder what the Trekkin are up to," she said aloud to herself, after having read half a page with no inkling of what she had read. "Perhaps Jephram has made his appeal to the band council to marry Traylon. What a grand thing for them that will be." The thought made her smile. She hoped they had all been returned to the band and had not been held too long. She also hoped that they had not been treated too harshly in their interrogations. The questioners weren't known for having pleasant methods. If she should find out in the future that they were unduly rough with her friends, she would have strong words for Corvin. Shaking off the negative thoughts, she returned to her less than attentive study of the journal, thumbing through the pages, stopping now and again to reread something she had marked as possibly valuable. After a time, she found herself scanning over pages she had not yet read. Her eyes pored over the words. They were beautiful to read. Not only did her mother write most eloquently, but her handwriting was a work of art. She paused at a new entry that began, like most in the journal, a synopsis of the day's events and her mother's general mood. There seemed to be nothing of note or revealing in the text. Then a word caught her eye. Accolade. She began to read more intently. Anything could have meaning, and valuable clues could be easily overlooked. The key to becoming Accolade lies in the secret of blood and water. She had seen that reference before, the secret of blood and water. Now if she could just recall what book it had been in. There were so many, and her study of them to this point had been nothing more than pursuing random chapters, her main focus being her mother's journal. Tuara flipped through the next few pages. The entry wasn't particularly long, but it warranted her undivided attention. Settling herself in the chair, she turned back to the beginning of the entry and began very carefully to read. I spent the day in the library, enjoying the rich, earthy smell of my books. Poor Arnhem had meetings with the Tradoc Council and the Potters' Guild. I really should have been in attendance, especially with the Potters, but I like to make him squirm alone sometimes. Besides, he does his share of leaving me to deal with political matters when he must travel. Turnabout is fair play, after all. Tuara had lessons today, or I would have spent the day with her. Oh, how she is growing and learning. She is much more intelligent than I. I fear she will become a force to be reckoned with as she matures. My daughter and I have been home for nearly a fortnight. I miss the high mountains, with their brisk mornings and crisp air. Our time there seemed to have passed like a dream. My little library is a poor substitute for the grand library at Samunis. I could spend a lifetime there, and still I would not make it through even a portion of the vast works that fill its countless shelves. And so I sit in my little corner, tucked away from the world for a time, and revel in the wealth of words that are mine to devour. There is a hint of shame peeking its disfigured head into my fleeting bliss, however. I have added another work to my collection, though I fear the librarian will scold me if I ever return, for I felt the need to relieve him of a member of his vast army. But I feel justified in my treachery, and should we meet again, I shall return the captive to him and pay penance for my betrayal. Though I dare say, if he knew the reason for my absconding with a precious member entrusted to his care, he would have sent the captive with me, with praise for my cause. I learned a great deal while searching the many leather-bound doorways through which knowledge is to be found, not the least of which will aid my precious princess in her journey. I have learned that the key to becoming Accolade lies in the secret of blood and water. After years of searching, decades upon decades, a single volume confirmed my suspicions, providing the connection for which I had so desperately sought. It is an odd dichotomy, I feel, for had I known as a crown princess what I know now, I would most assuredly have become the Queen's Accolade and never been united with my dear Arnhem. Or perhaps revealing such a secret with its likely accompanying devastation to ours and other realms would have led to my death. Either way, Arnhem would not have been mine. And yet it is the very connection to my most beloved that led me to the discovery for which I had been searching for so long. It came with the love of my little girl. When first she began to show signs, I thought perhaps it was only my imagination. But with time, the evidence grew, until I could no longer deny it. My little girl was different. I dare not speak of what manifested itself within her, nor even write it here. I have never told Arnhem, and Dorinda seemed not able to tell. Perhaps her humanness precluded her from being able to perceive. Nevertheless, I am grateful that no others appeared to have considered what I have come to know. I gave Arnhem the excuse that, while he traveled to meet with dignitaries and negotiate trade, I wished to take Tawara on holiday. He balked at first, but finally relented. I would have gone without his approval, but I am glad to have won him over. I am quite adept at convincing him to take my side. I would compliment myself on my great diplomacy if I did not know how fiercely he loves me and how deeply he trusts my judgment. Ultimately, my time at Samunis yielded great results. The old ones there helped me understand Tawara's differences and provided a way for us to keep her secret hidden and safe. It was for her that we traveled to the monastery, and so it was she who led me to the great library. It was her need that brought me to the one there, who aided me as I uncovered a secret that could topple an empire and put a crown that would have been mine on my daughter's head. One day I will share with her the key to becoming an Accolade, but first she must prepare, for there will be fierce opposition to revealing what I have discovered, and she must be capable of soldiering forward on her own. But she is intelligent and strong, and I trust that she will be able to shoulder the burden. And when she is ready, I will help her understand her own secret and share with her the knowledge given to me. Until such time I will keep these things close to my heart, for I have great love and respect for knowledge. It is a two-edged sword, and wielded improperly, it will cleave the wielder in two. Tawara flipped the page, intently scanning the next entry. There was nothing like what she had just read. She flipped several more pages, scouring the words for more information, but to no avail. She threw herself into the high-backed chair, letting out a grunt of frustration, excitement, and bewilderment. Her mother had taken her to some place called Samunis, and had met with whoever the ancient ones were. Together they had found a way to hide a secret about Tawara that had apparently died with her mother. What could it possibly be? What had her mother meant about something manifesting itself? Was she cursed? And what did they do to her? She had no memories of the experience whatsoever. And what was the secret to water and blood? That, at least, she might be able to find clues in one of her mother's books, but without more information, would she be able to gain the same knowledge her mother had? If the secret were that dangerous, and her mother had spent decades trying to understand it, what chance did she have? A thought occurred to her, and she leapt from her chair, rushing across the room to a large set of shelves near the library door. She let her fingertips glide over the many volumes as she quickly scanned the names of each. It had to be here. She stopped when she recognized golden lettering on the reddish-brown leather binding of a large book. It read, Duridim, a compilation of maps and cities of the various realms. She dragged it from its resting place between volumes in history and lore and carried it back to the table. Her mother's journal looked minuscule beside the massive volume. She had no idea where the information might lie, but was certain she would find it somewhere amongst the pages. Not knowing where else to begin, she opened to the first page and began to skim, tracing a finger along each line. If the secrets were kept at Samunas, then finding its location would be the first step to discovering them. Dun dun dun! Again. So, next chapter there, and A Flight from Shadows. That's a little bit shorter chapter. But still pretty important one for what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, it's a good chapter. I like that we were able to get into Tawara's mother's head a little bit, and because we don't see her, other than a brief here and there, and so it's nice to get an idea of who's behind the character.
Yeah, and it was fun. So this chapter actually was one of the later chapters that we wrote. We'd had most of the book flushed out, and, well, we thought we had it finished. And then we said, we need something more. We know what's going to happen to Tawara. We know what's going to happen because of her mother's goals and everything. But we need something more clearly defined and something that is a harder driver for Tawara that's revealed to our readers. Because we've just said, Tawara's been reading in this journal, and there's secrets that her mother wants, but we've said there's some secrets, and she wants to become Accolade, and her mother, before she died, in the prologue, was like, I want my daughter to be Accolade, and Dorinda, you're going to have to be by her side. Of course, you're human, so you're only going to be alive so long, but still. We needed somebody like you because I'm going to have to shift and become the force that drives her to become an Accolade. And then, of course, Dorinda dies, Tawara's mother dies, and then we hear from voices in that very library that, hey, her mother's death was not by chance. And, oh yeah, and since it's not by chance and you overheard that, you got to die too, Dorinda. Sorry about that. So hopefully nobody was too sad about that. Jared's mother still.
Yeah. I still catch it. Yeah.
Every time the name Dorinda comes up, Jared's mom is like, I can't believe you killed Dorinda. She was so sweet. So, for those of you who thought Dorinda was sweet and nice, sorry she died. But hey, it's the circle of life. So yeah, we put this chapter in, decided to write that we needed to see some things from Tawara's mother's perspective. And then we talked about doing a flashback, and we were like, well, it's kind of hard to do a flashback when the character whom you want to flash back to is dead. And then we were like, aha, she's reading her journals. She has these journals from her mom, and one of them is a secret journal. What if we just put a chapter in where we get it directly from the horse's mouth? Maybe the same horse that killed her mother. But
That's bad.
I know, it was bad. But, no, so we wrote that in, and this chapter I'm not going to give any, not going to throw any spoilers out there, but from a context perspective, this chapter has a lot of pivotal information in it that will be played out over
in
the course.
The chapters we're writing right now, actually.
Yes, yeah, we're playing stuff that we're literally rewriting and editing for book 2 right now. So it's we really got to do the Patreon thing, Jared. We got to do it. And for anybody, it's for that Patreon, just so you know, when we start doing it, it will be some major deep dive, and it's going to have spoilers galore.
All the things.
Yeah, it will have all the things, because I'm like chomping at the bit, like, there's so much I want to talk about and say, like, guess what's going to happen now? And then here's the history behind that, and blah, 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 blah. You know?
We'll get there.
Yeah,
We'll get there.
Yeah, because we were talking about this the other day. From a history perspective, this is how we come up with things. I don't think we mentioned this before. In book 2, we're writing. There's 2 just side characters. They just show up. They're just paltry characters that Tawara interacts with, and they're in the book for about a page as she talks to them a little bit, and then she goes on her way, and they're not in the story anymore. I mean, they could come back. Who knows?
Yeah, but the chances are...
Yeah.
There's no need to bring them back. They have no significance to bring them back.
Yeah. There's nothing right now that says, we need to bring those 2 characters back. One of them doesn't even have a name. But, what did we do, Jared?
They have complete life histories.
Yeah.
That, no, I mean, not in the book, obviously.
No.
But that's just part of our creative process. Is if we're going to have somebody in there, we've got to know why they're in there. We've got to know who they are and how they would react and act. And
yeah, exactly. So, like, this isn't spoilery or anything.
No.
It's, it's coming up in book 2. You'll get there, but there are just 2 characters that Tawara just happens to come across, and she's trying to ask somebody a question about, hey, where do I go to blah blah blah, and she's going to get introduced to a significant character, but we needed to kind of point her in that direction, so we introduced 2 people. Celinda is one of their names. The other one doesn't even have a name.
Yep.
But she walks up, and they're in the middle of conversation, and we have like just 2 little snippets of their people that are interested in study and in science and in biology and whatnot. And so they're having like this debate about, well, what about this and what about that with spiders, that they're studying. And then we said, well, how would they talk? Just like Jared said, what would their reaction be? So we said, well, Celinda's been at Samunas, or at... that was a spoiler. Let that slip.
That's all right.
Dang it. It's going to come up anyway. Okay. Sorry. Ignore what I just said. Cancel that. Block that out of your mind. She's like, I've been at this place. I've been studying here for a lot of years. And the other character's like, well, I've been here for this long. And we were like, well, their relationship is she's the old lady is an old high elf, and he's a Saparan,
Yeah.
but he's very old. And he came to study. He left, didn't believe in the whole Saparan religion and everything like that, and went and met her, just stayed there and studied and researched and learned with her. Well, now he's been there for a very long time, and now from a human perspective, at least as far as wrinkly and aged look goes, they're like on par, the same age with each other now. And so now they've fallen in love with each other. And now they're an actual item, you know, no longer student pupil. But we were like, well, why did he leave? What made him leave? Where did he come from? Well, what's her history? We know all of that about these 2 characters who are in the book for 1 page.
But you got to do that.
Yeah.
Well, at least for us,
Yeah.
if you're going to build a world, you have to build every piece of the world. You can't, it's not like a play stage where everything's just a false front and there's nothing to it. It's all got to have substance.
Yeah. We actually went through and listed, and we said they were like, all the way up through book 2, there are like 5 characters that we've put into place that we haven't done deep dives into their background. And the only reason is those specific characters are like straight up there. They walk into the room and they deliver a piece of mail. Or they're a clerk at a desk who simply takes a note and says, yeah, go that way. I'm like, all we needed right there was a clerk. Not the personality of a clerk, not anything special or quirky or whatnot. We do have some of those characters in there, but there are a few that we just need a soldier. We just need a messenger. We just need a clerk to, fit in that world. So even some of those characters, we've kind of said, oh, well, here's a little bit of, this could be a little bit about them, but we haven't really gone into depth on those because they're like they represent all clerks, or they represent all soldiers that are only doing soldiery duties. But those few characters are like the only ones that we haven't fleshed out backgrounds on, where they came from and who they are and what they're doing and stuff like that. Like we have backgrounds on who are the two. They're in the trekking camp. The 2 ladies that come up. It's really frustrating when you write a book and you can't remember some of your characters' names.
Yeah.
They're sitting with Shalea. They're having a conversation. We read about them.
It's right there.
I know. I can. If you followed
Tamila?
So far, yes, Tamila and Veril. Bam. Good job. We got it. Tamila and Veril. We know the history of Tamila and Veril. We know the history of Shalea and Rothel, and Jephram and Fram, and they're kids. The other ones are kids, so there's not much history there. But we have backgrounds, to different degrees. We have backgrounds on all of our characters and the worlds they've lived in, and what type of upbringing they've had, and why they have the personalities that they have. And it's crazy to have all of that.
Crazy but necessary.
Yes.
At least for our insane method.
For what we do, crazy yet necessary. But hopefully that makes our world, that makes our characters more real and the people more inviting, and their conversations and their quirks and whatever more relatable as you read our books. And hopefully it continues that way. But yes, from a deep dive perspective, that's just like the tiny little tip, getting into depth of who our characters are. Just the little tip of the iceberg. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many thousands of pages of notes we have on lore and history and background, the lore of the continent, of where, even whatever this thing is that Tawara is manifesting.
Yeah.
Well, where does that come from? What is all of that? And what's the total history of it? And why is her mom so shocked and everything? We know all of that, and how it's all going to be revealed at some point, but only to the extent that it fits within this story. The full-fledged history and everything is going to be in the prequel. So you got a long way to go before we actually get to all that lore. Unless we start this Patreon and you want to join us over there. But again, both past and future, it will be no holds barred when it comes to spoilers and discussions and stuff. So, because like I said, as we're sitting here right now, I want to be like, oh, and this little piece that we just read in that journal, that's going to point to here. And this other little thing's going to go to this. And this goes from, go back 20,000 years ago and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you want a Patreon? Let us know.
Yeah. Well, I think regardless, I want to do a Patreon. Maybe everybody will be like, we don't want to get in that deep, and they won't. And, you might be like, yeah, it's not for me. That's okay. I want to do it because we talk about this stuff constantly, and I'm like, we should be recording this. We should be just this whole session of what we're talking about. We should be recording this whole thing and sharing it with anybody who's interested. And so people can be like, yeah, but what if, and then throw something else out there that we might have been like, oh yeah, exactly. So we shall see where that goes. So before I spoil anything else, we'll shift gears a little bit here. So hopefully you enjoyed that chapter. We wanted to talk a little bit about some of the creative things we've tried to do in our life. Just a couple things in particular. One of them is stomp rockets. Does anybody know what stomp rockets are? If you don't, I'll explain them to you, but you should still go check out stomp rockets because they are mighty good fun.
They are fun.
Even as a 44-year-old, stomp rockets are fun. So, what a stomp rocket is you have a bladder that's like about
a foot square.
Yeah, about a foot square. There's some different sizes. It's a big rubber or plastic
Or
bladder.
not a foot square. A foot.
Maybe like 6-8 inches by a foot long, or six by 6, depending. There's some that I've seen that are bigger.
And a couple inches deep.
Yeah. Yeah, only a few inches tall. So this bladder is made out of a, material that just like a...
It's like a hard rubber.
Yeah, it's like a hard rubber, so it returns back to whatever shape. You crinkle it all up and let go, and it returns back to that shape. It's like a molded or formed rubber, but it's a soft rubber or plastic. Then attached to the bladder is a hose. And then on the end of that hose is about maybe a 10-inch long tube that has little legs that support it. It swivels a little bit so you can point it in different directions. You can point it way straight up at the sky. You can point it at other people. There's a number of... You can point it any direction, just about. Then you have a plastic rocket that'll have either a hard plastic or a foam tip with fins on it, and it slides down over said tube. And then, of course, you probably already figured out they're called stomp rockets because you stomp on the bladder. Well, if you're 230 pounds and 6'2" and you don't stomp, but you jump on the bladder, you can send these rockets to very great heights.
Yes, with very, very decent velocity.
Yes, yeah, they will flipping take off. I'm like, Elon Musk, just take your Starship and hook up a giant bladder and we can all jump on it. And boom, to Mars we go. So, yeah, so when I was in college, we had a stomp rocket set up, and my two oldest boys, we went out in the middle, and we had, the buildings were, I think, the apartments we were in, I think, were 6 stories. I think they were 6 stories tall. And these little 8-inch plastic rockets, we would jump on them and launch them, no trouble clearing a 6-story building and shooting all the way over the building into the play area out behind it. And luckily, we actually never lost any rockets on top of the building. They would launch so high and go so far. When my 40-pound son would jump on it, they would definitely not go that high. So they wanted me to always be the stomper, and they would be the chasers. So, from the creative side...
Yeah, why are we bringing these up, Chris?
Why are we bringing this up? Because there's another thing that growing up, Jared and I used to do all the time. Jared had multiple of these, and I would come over to his house, and we would go out and use them. And they are blow dart guns. So, as mid-20-year-old adults with a couple of kids, we would get together like one night a week. The kids would go to bed, my wife would go to bed, Jared's wife and kids would go to bed, and it'd be like 11 o'clock at night, and I'd be like, okay, Jared, I'm going to come over and we're going to hang out for about 2 hours, and then I'm going to go home and go to bed so I can get up for work in the morning. Because we were crazy even in our mid-20s. Married with kids.
Married with you.
And neither of us drank or partied or anything. And we knew we both had to get up for work. So we would do play Star Wars Battlefronts for a couple of hours. Or come up with crazy stuff like, if you take a blow dart gun and you pull the little mouthpiece off, and then that plastic tube that I was talking about that the stomp rocket slides down over, you can take that blow dart gun and slide it right up to the end of that tube, and there's a little stopper. And then you electrical tape the crap out of it, and it stays on there really well.
Yeah.
So then you take that bladder, because it has a stop at the end of the tube, the end of that plastic tube has a little X, a little plastic X at the end. So stuff doesn't fall down in there. Well, when you butt the blow dart up to that little plastic X, and then you tape it all together, that bladder, you just squeeze it, just give it a little, just barely, little tiny little squeeze, and then you put your dart with a plastic tip, and it's a 6-inch long spiked piece of steel with a plastic butt. You put it in there and you let go, and that bladder is trying to go back to its shape. So it's and sucks that dart right up against that plastic piece. If you think a plastic dart with a foam tip has a lot of velocity when 230 pounds jumps on that bladder, that doesn't have anything on how fast a blow dart will launch itself out of that blow dart gun.
Yeah. Didn't you take it to school?
I did.
And film it in slow motion?
Yeah, I took it. We had one of the 24,000 frames per second high-speed cameras in one of my engineering classes. And we had to do something. We had to do something for the engineering class with a high-speed camera. Well, I talked to my teacher, and my class group that we were assigned to do this project, I told them about this dart gun idea, and everybody was like, yes, we must do this. And the teacher was like, no, 6-inch dart, we don't want to kill anybody or anything. So I convinced him, well, what if we take the metal dart out, and it'll be less exciting, but we only do the little plastic thing. So I think I'll have to see if I have to have that video still somewhere. Maybe I'll post it as well. We'll put it on there if I can find it. But what we did, we made a plexiglass box and had the blow dart gun, the tip of the blow dart gun. We would load it, stick it into the plexiglass box, and then we had a full can of soda. And then we filmed it with that blow dart at 24,000 frames per second, hitting that can and watching it like nuclear bomb explode boom, inside that clear plexiglass box. We got an A on our project, so that was good. It was very entertaining. But the whole idea came because
we were bored and being creative.
Yeah. And we came up with this idea and we were shooting stuff. And Jared was like, hey, I have these Pepsis. So we took the Pepsis out in the driveway. And then we were like, all right, how far back can we aim? And one of us would get down on the ground and try to aim this blow dart gun and then be like, okay, stomp. And then the other one would jump on it. And I don't know how many cans of soda we just demolished. We lined up several at one point and blasted through, I think, 3 or 4 soda cans with these little darts.
Yeah.
We also had, Jared had Bebop and Rocksteady.
Oh, yeah, the little action figures.
And Casey Jones.
Yeah.
You had Bebop, Rocksteady, and Casey Jones. Anybody know who Bebop, Rocksteady, and Casey Jones are? If you do, you're probably from our era. Well, we had the late 80s, early 90s, what were they, 5 inches tall?
Yeah, probably about 5 inches tall.
About 5 inches tall, solid, the ones that were solid, plastic. Not the hollow ones, but they had the version that were like solid, like heavy-duty plastic. And those 6-inch darts hitting Casey Jones or Bebop or Rocksteady right in the chest would go all the way through and embed themselves into the backstop of plywood that we had behind them.
Yeah.
Some G.I. Joe figures. They lost arms.
Oh, yeah. We tore some action figures up.
Yeah. When we were done, they had seen real war. Real action. They earned their medals, their Purple Hearts, and their medals of honor for the action that they saw. So you can get creative with all kinds of stuff, especially when it's 11:30 at night. You've played enough of Battlefronts 2, and you either have to be quiet in the living room because you have kids asleep in the other room, and so you have to be real quiet in the living room, or go do something outside in a driveway but also not wake up your neighbors.
Yeah.
Then you can come up with ideas like, let's see if we can blow something up with a stomp rocket and combine that with the blow dart gun. So there's all kinds of fun, crazy, interesting, creative things you can do that may or may not be dangerous and semi-deadly.
Probably, yeah.
Neither of us drank, so we couldn't even be like, hold my beer. So, yeah, lots of fun times with that, and I'll see if I can find that video, and if I can, I'll post it and share it out there. Yeah, I mean, it's not just kids. Kids aren't the only ones that get bored, and then they're like, well, "What do you want to do?" I don't know. What do you want to do? You think we can jump out of that tree? It's just as you get older, the things get potentially more risky because you have more mass. You're higher up from the ground, and from a child perspective, you have infinitely more money.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have maybe you're really wealthy and you have an actual endless supply of money. But if you don't, the comparison of a mid-20-year-old, even with a family who's working full-time, you might be like, well, I got $40 that we can go spend on something. Well, you think we can find anything that blows up for $40?
Oh, you can.
Yeah, you can. You definitely can. So, yeah, lots of creative things you can do. So something else that we kind of had as a potential topic to talk about today. was another creative thing is songwriting. So this is something Jared and I used to listen to a lot of music as teenagers growing up, different music. We had a lot of friends that we lived in the CD age where you had the coolest thing was get a 6-disc CD changer in your car. And then you have on your visor, you either have a flip case with hundreds of CDs and lots of mixtapes that are CDs. And then you have across your visor layers and layers of discs.
Just the best, dozen or so.
Yeah.
And
those are the quick access.
A song or two on each disc.
Yeah. Sometimes you get whole tracks. Sometimes it'll be whole albums. But we were talking about it, and both of us, family, friends, a lot of people that we knew would listen to Weird Al. And my observation, and I'm not original in observing this, I don't think, I think Weird Al is probably, if not the greatest, one of the greatest musically skilled individuals in history. Yeah. Like, granted, I mean, he has original songs that are his. I mean, if you've never listened to Albuquerque, go listen to Albuquerque.
That's all on Chris. That's
It's 10 minutes long. It's a 10-minute long. So if you think listening to all of American Pie by Don McLean is long, go listen to all of Albuquerque by Weird Al Yankovic.
It rivals Freebird.
I mean, it is long. But the moral of Albuquerque is I hate sauerkraut. I mean, I don't, but that's Weird Al's moral. You'll get it if you go listen to Albuquerque. So, yeah, I think from a talent and skill that he has developed over time, it's pretty amazing. So one of the things I wanted to share is I tried writing some parody songs, and I wrote one in high school. If you are Elvis Presley fans, I listened to a lot of Elvis Presley growing up. One of my brothers is, I don't know if he still is, but he used to be like major Elvis Presley fanatic. And so he had like Elvis clothes, Elvis poster on the wall. There was one, it was like a felt poster with Elvis painted into the felt.
This Andy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah, he shifted it was Michael Jackson when he was younger, and then teenage years, Elvis Presley. But we all liked Elvis Presley. We liked a lot of different music, but Elvis was one of them. So there's one song, and it's a lesser known song I found out that Elvis Presley sings called In the Ghetto. There are people who are Elvis Presley fans know In the Ghetto. If you're not an Elvis Presley fan, you may have heard it, but if you are a casual listener to Elvis Presley, you may not recognize it. That's okay. But you can go look up Elvis Presley's In the Ghetto. Well, when I was in high school, I liked parody things, and I still do, like random, chaotic ridiculousness. So I wrote a parody of In the Ghetto, and I wrote In the Meadow. Because I grew up, Jared lived in the city, and I grew up out in the country, and did like buck bales and worked on farms and stuff like that, and went to school at a little rural school in Spokane. It's out in the middle of nowhere. So In the Ghetto is about if you're familiar with it, you'll know this story. If not, In the Ghetto is about a boy who grows up in Chicago who it's challenging and everything, and he grows up and becomes a victim of the streets of Chicago. And then, it just tells that story of, on a cold and gray Chicago morn, a poor little baby child is born in the ghetto, and it tells of his story. Well, I got thinking about, instead of in the ghetto with a boy being born, what if it's a little cow born in the meadow? So I rewrote it. So I'm gonna see if I can remember the words to "In the Meadow." As the bugs fly on a cold and gray. Nope. See, I forgot it. I messed up already. I was thinking of in the ghetto instead of in the meadow. Try again. As the bugs fly on a hot and sunny Spokane morn, a poor little baby calf is born in the meadow, and his mama cries. 'Cause if there's one thing that she don't need, it's a cow for the farmer to turn into feed in the meadow. Well, people, don't you understand? A calf needs a helping hand. He's gonna be a side of beef someday. Well, take a look at you and me. Are we too hungry to see? Or do we simply take a bite and burp the other way? Well, the grinder turns, and a poor little calf with a runny nose plays in the grass as the summer wind blows in the meadow, and his fear burns. So he starts to roam the fields at night, and he learns how to buck and he learns how to fight in the meadow. Then one night in desperation, the young calf breaks away. He jumps a fence but don't get far, 'cause he gets run down by a car, and his mama cries. As a crowd gathers round right there in the street, the farmer says, what a waste of meat in the meadow. And as her young calf dies, on a hot and sunny Spokane morn, another little baby calf is born in the meadow. In the meadow. There's always that note that goes back in the ghetto at the end.
Yeah.
And I can't play the guitar and whatever, so you get it a cappella. So, there's my parody for the day of
Very creative. Very creative work.
Yeah, I think I wrote that, I think it was 16.
Around there, yeah. Something like that.
Around there. And I really tried to be like, I got to get the words exact. Like the exact phrasing. I can't have any like bumps or hiccups in how it's got to sound. It's got to match Elvis Presley singing in the ghetto exactly. And, I think it still fits. I haven't gone back and double checked myself to see if it works. And I've never tried singing it like do that for karaoke or something.
Yeah.
And try to switch the words out to see how well it goes with the actual music. But hey, now you get a little bit more scary insight into Chris Howard's brain. Like I said, when we last time from Beauty and the Beast, the "Pooh, I'm afraid I've been thinking, a dangerous pastime I know." It's always dangerous. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of different ways to be creative, a lot of different things you can do. So we've talked about a couple different, we shared a book today, talked about blowing things up and shooting darts and being crazy, all kinds of different things. You can be creative and be interesting and find things that make life more entertaining, more interesting, and more fun. Because we got to go to work. just the day-to-day stuff. We all have to do it. The drudge.
The grind.
Yeah. So, if you've been thinking about writing, if you've been thinking about writing music, if you've been thinking about doing a podcast, or picking up, I don't know how to play the guitar. I wish I would have learned how to do that. Maybe someday I'll pick it up, and I started teaching myself the banjo at one point. I've tried picking up the guitar and the piano a couple different times. I do play the trumpet. I can't play the trumpet and the harmonica. But, maybe someday I'll pick those up again and try it again. No matter how old, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your life's like, go find some way to be creative and, develop some skills and some talents that bring a little bit of light into your life. And if you can, share them with other people and tell us about it. Maybe we'll have you on and we'll talk to you about it. But thanks for being with us today. Yep. Appreciate you listening. And until next time, go in good spirits. Thanks for listening to the Creators Guild podcast. Don't forget to get your copy of A Flight from Shadows, available on Amazon. While you're there, please rate it and give it a review. If you like the Creators Guild, please like and subscribe, and make sure to share it with your friends. Until next time, go in good spirits.